It's another beautiful day here in Lake Tahoe on July 29th, 2024. Today I'm joined by Brett Wilson, a Silicon Valley veteran who's been working in the tech industry for over 20 years. Brett started his career in consulting, working for Accenture, where he helped with software implementations for Fortune 100 companies. He then founded several startups before attending Berkeley Haas Business School to earn his MBA. There, he met John Hughes, who he co-founded TubeMogul with after winning a business plan competition at Berkeley. He grew the MarTech company from inception to IPO, and the company was eventually acquired by Adobe around 3 years after their IPO for $540 million. He then helped Adobe with implementation for several years before starting Swift Ventures, a VC firm with his TubeMogul co-founder, and they invest in B2B AI-focused companies. Brett, welcome to Tahoe Minds.
Morning, Nick. Happy to be here.
So we'll start with early in your career, you went into consulting straight out of college. What did the process of getting a job look like? Because as you know, it's become pretty different. It's a very, it's an industry that a lot of college grads want to go into. So was it pretty tough to get a job straight into consulting?
So there's different tiers of consulting firms, right? There's BCG and McKinsey, Anderson Consulting, renamed Accenture. It's probably a little bit more of a blue collar firm, but a partner had gone to my college, and he was pretty determined to hire people from the school. So they had kind of a series of case competitions on campus that I got to participate in, and that was my process for kind of getting to know the partners. I can't remember if I won, but I did well in the case competition, and then that opened up an interview. And I was going to Chico State in Northern California at the time. I remember the final interview. They flew me down from Chico to San Francisco. I didn't even know Chico had an airport. So I was blown away. I was determined if I got that job, I was definitely going to take it. That was 96, and I got the job.
Nice. That's awesome. And you're not a very technical guy, but you were working in the tech consulting area. How did you succeed when you don't consider yourself a tech savvy guy?
It's funny. I thought I was joining a strategy consulting firm. I was going to go advise CEOs. And then the first week, they teach you to code in C. And that's part of their program is the first month, you're learning to code or at least about code. I had a few weeks in San Francisco, and then they fly you to St. Charles, Illinois for kind of a capstone week. So that was about as technical as I ever got. And then the job itself, we were largely helping big companies implement ERP systems. And a lot of them were worried about the infamous Y2K. So they thought, the clock was going to strike midnight and all the software would shut down. So they were racing to upgrade their ERP. And in my case, I was doing PeopleSoft implementations. And of course, the software was already built. We would come in, tweak it to your processes, help with the change management, and training the team. So you didn't have to be that technical.
Okay, yeah, I see. And you were sent abroad as a pretty young college grad for these consulting projects. Can you talk about that experience a bit?
Yeah. You hate to think the best year of your life has passed, but that was a pretty good year. So I was a couple years into my first job, and I was sent to Lyon, France, along with about 50 other 21-year-old Americans at the time. Our client was Adecco. It's a large temporary services firm, and our job was to implement PeopleSoft. And that was just an incredible year. One, there was no adult supervision because there were so many projects. There was like a shortage of senior consultants. Two, I learned a lot on the job. And then three, back to the 50, 21-year-old Americans, bouncing around Europe every weekend. and they paid us a per diem for the burden of having to live in France. So I actually met my wife Marisa there. There were 9 other marriages on that project, so had never had wine really before that point, and I came back a little bit of a veteran. So yeah, it's good job, good year.
Yeah, yeah. And was that normal to be sent somewhere for a year plus doing those projects?
Yeah, these weren't kind of short-term strategy projects. These were kind of long-term implementations. And when you're replacing the software that you use to run your business, there's a lot of work you have to do around tweaking the software to make sure it works, testing it, but then most importantly, helping the people on the ground. And in our case, these were accountants doing accounts receivable and accounts payable and things like that. So there was a big kind of training aspect to it as well.
Yeah, yeah. And were you sent anywhere else besides that? Which different locations were you living in and moving to?
So my very first project, and I remember this, I'm finishing my training in San Francisco, and the partner says, hey, how would you like to go live in a casino in Las Vegas for a year with dozens of other people your age? So my first project was Las Vegas, and we were putting in PeopleSoft for Caesar's World. So that was totally insane, as you can imagine. Flying back and forth every weekend to San Francisco from Vegas. And again, the work part was amazing, but the personal part was incredible, because you could use your flight to either fly home or fly a friend into Vegas. So guess what was more common? So I did that for a year. Then I did Fort Lauderdale and Minneapolis. My second client was Republic Industries, which is Alamo and National Rent-A-Car. Alamo Rent-A-Car was in Fort Lauderdale, and National was in Minneapolis. So on Monday, I'd fly to Miami, drive up to Fort Lauderdale, and then midweek, I'd fly to Minneapolis and back. So was just racking up the miles at that point in my young career.
That's awesome. That sounds amazing. And so you worked there for a while, and you had a great time. Why did you leave? You started something of your own?
Yeah, I always wanted to do my own thing. Growing up, I always thought that I'd be an entrepreneur of some sort. I think I also saw that I probably wasn't talented enough to rise up through the ranks of a big corporation, to the CEO role on my own. But maybe if I started something, I could. So I was just drawn to the idea of controlling my own destiny a little bit, trying to take a swing and see what happens. So it was 99. So I'd spent a few years at Andersen Consulting, Accenture, and a partner from the firm had left to help his dad sell this product that his dad had invented. And his dad used to go to like trade shows, and he'd pour oil on a cloth, and he had this magic cleaning solution called OxyClean. And so this partner at Accenture leaves to help his dad with this company. This company gets pretty big, and part of their secret sauce was using direct response ads or infomercial ads to kind of create demand to then sell that product through retail. And in talking with him, and at the time I was doing a lot of e-commerce stuff at Accenture, I realized that there was an opportunity. We were still watching TV at the time, and you had these infomercials, but if you didn't order the product from the infomercial itself, there was no place to get it. So a college roommate and I started a company, youcansave.com, focused on kind of software. It was kind of shrink-wrapped e-commerce software to help these infomercial companies sell their products online. And one of my not so smart moves, maybe it was in retrospect, is to fund the company. I cashed out my 401k. So you can you imagine telling your dad that you're cashing out your 401k? So they were a little wary about that, but it turned out to be a good move.
Yeah, yeah. And that was before you went to Haas for your MBA?
Yeah, that was before Haas. This company was kind of a trip because we didn't raise money. I'd put it in the category of kind of Me Too companies. We ended up being an e-commerce company that sold you basically products you didn't need. It was like a sharper image. But we were really good at online direct marketing. And it was the late 90s, so kind of everything worked. Search worked really well. Email worked really well. Affiliate programs worked really well. And we got this thing up to 1,000 orders a day. No capital, except a 50 grand loan from my dad. Thank you, Dad. And sold that company. So a few years into a larger infomercial company. And it was kind of that experience where I got the bug and just wanted to do something bigger, better. So that drove me back to school.
Yeah, and that's yeah. So that's the main reason behind you going to school and Berkeley as like the most entrepreneurial of the MBA programs.
I think that was part of it. If I'm honest, I probably had a little bit of a chip on my shoulder from going to Chico State, and I wanted some quote unquote real credentials, which is total BS, as you know. But I always wanted to have that kind of marquee name on my resume. I had to apply twice to get in. One of the few state school kids that they ever let in. But I'm glad they did because that experience was transformational for me. I met my co-founder, John, in an entrepreneurship class. We basically kind of right away identified one another as having pretty complementary skills. John was a software engineer, can build anything with software with his hands, probably a little bit more introverted. So we were a good team. We wanted to start a business. So we went through school kind of framing it. How do we use this class, for a business that we might start? And we actually were throwing a lot of stuff up against the wall. We had a few different ideas. And there was also a business plan competition. So with our final idea, we actually won the business plan competition, and the rest is history.
Yeah, that's awesome. And there's a lot of mixed views on is business school worth it or not. What type of person do you think business school is worth it for?
I think when you're at the point in your life where you're trying to transition from one thing to another, that's where it's really good. A lot of my classmates, maybe they were trying to go from engineering to product management or from consulting to finance. So it can be hard to make a switch like that, just getting a job. So that's where it's best. And do you have to go to business school? Absolutely not. But it is fun. And you do make a lot of connections. And for me, when we started raising money for our company, it was a struggle. A classmate was actually the first one to fund me. Another classmate was our first kind of team member. Another classmate, years later, became pretty senior investment banker at Morgan Stanley. She's the one that helped us sell our company to Adobe. So all of this goodness came out of the Haas experience for me. So I don't think you can go wrong, but do you need it? Probably not.
Yeah. And can you talk a bit more about how you met John and how that business idea kind of came to life?
Yeah, so we met in this class. The goal of the class was come up with an idea, write a business plan, and present it at the end of the semester. We actually were like building the thing. I remember early on, John was like, well, let's just build it. I was like, we can do that. So I knew he was different, especially amidst kind of my MBA classmates. And that initial idea wasn't the idea, but we just kept working on different ideas. And in between your first and second year of the MBA program, it's pretty typical to do an internship. And I did an internship at Yahoo. He did an internship at Adobe. And we were living in Berkeley at the time. So we would take this train down to San Jose together. And then when at the end of the day, we'd meet up in the bar cart. And as it happened, we would kind of commiserate at just, how difficult it was to get anything done in a big company. I remember John saying on one of those bar cart train rides, I'm definitely never going to work for Adobe, which was ironic because they bought our company years later. But our third idea was around online video. And the year was 2007, and online video, it was just beginning to take off. Think of it a little bit like what's happening in AI right now. It was just kind of head spinning, all the changes. YouTube hadn't won yet. There were dozens and dozens of kind of video sharing sites. So initially, our insight, maybe not very insightful, was just that this industry is going to take off, and we want to be part of it, and we want to build tools for people that are doing things here. So John built a tool that helped you aggregate your analytics from all these different video sites. So if you were a content creator, a studio, an influencer, influencers were brand new at that point. We didn't even have a name for it yet, but politician, and you're putting your video on all these sites. You could go to TubeMogul and aggregate the analytics into a single dashboard. And that product, we put it out there for free, and it just started to take off. We're still in school at the time. So we enrolled in the Berkeley business plan competition, and we'd done it the prior year and got smoked. Like I think we made it to the semifinals, but not the finals. And our clever idea was that we were going to get a set of gullible first-year MBAs to write our business plan for us. So we recruited these MBAs that were going through the same class that John and I had met in. We're like, hey, how would you like to work on an actual idea? And they were like, yeah. So we were like, great. You're going to help us with this business plan competition.
This is the second one?
This is the second one. So meanwhile, John and I, we go off to China. We're doing this 3-unit boondoggle class in China. We're pretty sure these guys aren't going to win. We actually kind of forget about it. We get a call from these first-year MBAs. We got to the finals. So we were proud, a little embarrassed that they got there and we hadn't. So we came back, and during the competition, Marisa and Jeannie, our wives, were in the audience, and they definitely didn't think we were going to win. But we won the People's Choice Award, and that gave us the confidence to kind of turn down the job offers that we had, and go for it. And that kind of begat this 12-year odyssey.
Wow. Yeah, that's awesome. Can you talk a little bit more about that China trip that you guys took? What was that?
Yeah, so it was just it was like a doing business in China class. I had done a class in Hyderabad, India the year before. So it was part class. You got to go see interesting companies. You got to take some classes about how to do business in China, and then you traveled a little bit. So it was a great trip, and it was the second year of our MBA. And back to like, is the MBA worth it? I mean, it's fun. So the second year, a lot of people are learning to golf. To give you an idea. But yeah, it was a good trip.
Yeah. So you briefly mentioned how you're helping influencers and even politicians. You guys played a role in one of those elections with Obama and John McCain. Can you talk about that a little bit?
Oh yeah, you did some deep research, Nick. Wow. Um, yeah, so that election, 2008, it was the first time that politicians were using digital video to kind of win hearts and minds. And so to get press, we started creating these charts that would track which candidates were getting more views and where and how. And we started popping up in the Wall Street Journal. The article wasn't about us, it wasn't about TubeMogul, but it would be according to TubeMogul. Meanwhile, we started kind of pivoting the company a little bit. So we started with this little, I would call it a tool in retrospect. It wasn't a company. We helped you aggregate your analytics. Another kind of complaint or problem from our users was, well, getting our video to all those sites to begin with is kind of a hassle, because every site, they had different file requirements and different metadata requirements. So we added this capability where you could upload a video once to us, TubeMogul, and then we would help you super syndicate it to all of those different sites in one fell swoop. And then, of course, you could see the analytics. So we started seeing politicians use this thing. And yeah, Obama's campaign in 2008, they were definitely really savvy digitally. So they were using the tool extensively. And yeah, our joke was McCain didn't use the tool, didn't get elected. Correlation's not causation, but sometimes.
Yeah. That's awesome. And so during this whole business journey, the business evolved a few times. How did you navigate those different evolutions, and how did you decide which things to focus on and which things to drop?
Yeah, we were really determined to build a scalable business. And I think one of the things that we were good at is being intellectually honest about what we had and what we didn't. And that early product, it was exciting. We had hundreds of thousands of users. We started to have kind of a freemium business model. There was a free product, and you could pay for extra features or usage. And we got that up into the kind of multi-millions in revenue. But when we were really honest with ourselves, we didn't think that it solved a difficult enough problem to be a big business. And so that kind of kicked off a series of pivots. And some of it was following the money. Some of it was listening to our users, and some of it was intuition. So our first pivot, a lot of our users, they were starting to have video on their own site as well. And we started to hear, but it's great, we can see analytics for our videos on these other sites, but if we could see our own as well, that would be cool. So we acquired a company, actually. We were like 10 people, there were 5 at the time. And they did video player analytics. So there's a couple lines of code that went inside of a video player. And now you could see all of your user analytics, your video analytics, kind of holistically in one, behind one piece of glass. How long people were watching, where they were dropping off, where they were watching, kind of anything you wanted to know. And again, that product, it kind of took off in terms of adoption. I would say there was a point where we were the top kind of video analytics solution in the world. We were powering the video analytics for video player companies. So there was something there. But when we started to ask our clients, so how do you use the analytics? What decisions do you make differently because of this? We realized, well, they were interested in it. And sometimes they might tweak their video, but it didn't really profoundly influence their business. And you want to be in the position where people are influencing their business decisions because of you. Meanwhile, we had a lot of different types of individuals and companies that were using this piece of software. Revenue's gone up. We're probably 8-9 million in revenue. And we started running into advertisers that would tell us, this is great, but what we really want is to simulate TV advertising online. And you probably don't remember this, Nick, but there were no video ads at the time. And so I distinctly remember asking one of our clients, well, what's your budget for like social media tools? And we kind of fell into that budget. And they were like, it's like $300-400K a year, something like that. So, okay, what's your budget for TV ads or video ads? And I think they said it's about $2 billion a year. So it's like $2 billion with a B. So back to kind of following the money, we're like, okay, big budget, and these video ads kind of drive, it was a CPG company, drives their business. So we started one of the first kind of video ad networks, and we became a place where you could scale a digital video ad campaign. And the tie-in to where we started was that if you used us, we had these great analytics to help you understand who was watching your ad and where it was being watched. And we started to learn a lot more about advertising. And we learned that often similar types of advertising were kind of a black box. You put your money in, but you didn't really know where your money was going, if it was working. And that business really started to scale. And so we pretty quickly kind of pivoted to that business. The thing that was just a little unnatural for us, it was very manual. We would have to go to individual websites or publishers and basically create the space that the ads would run in. We had kind of people in the middle doing the ad operations to make everything work. So it just was a little messy. And we got the idea, this would be really cool if you could just do this in a piece of software, the same way that you do a paid search ad in Google. And that kind of begat our last kind of major pivot. And we ended up launching the first self-serve software for brands to automate their video ad buys, from planning, ad serving, optimization, measurement, kind of anything you needed to do, you could now do in this piece of software with a couple people what it used to take a couple dozen people to do. And that it took us 4 years from the outset to get to, call it, product market fit. And that's the business that we ultimately scaled.
Yeah. When you were looking at hiring your team, I think it grew to 650 people or something near there. What did you look for, and how did you figure out what types of people to hire?
So I think one of the things, when John and I started our company, it's not like we were passionate about advertising. We became passionate about it over time. We were much more passionate about the type of company that we wanted to build, what we wanted to stand for. And we were both these kind of blue collar kids from the Midwest. One board member described us once as an awesome team of nobodies. And I think that kind of encapsulated us well. And we were really into people that weren't just great talkers, but were unbelievable doers. And in the early days, because we had no pedigree, right? We hadn't raised venture capital before, hadn't started a software company before. We didn't get our MBA from Stanford. So the only way we were going to raise money was by doing what we said. And we would just keep coming back to investors and other stakeholders and be like, you know how we said this? Well, we did it. That in turn kind of became this rallying cry for the company. And we coined this phrase called the do-say ratio, because we learned early on that doing what you say, it's really about the only thing that matters in a startup. So back to your question, what types of people did we look for? We were looking for people that were doers, not just talkers, that had an extreme bias for action. And, people that were a little bit crazy. Just it's really hard to build something special from scratch. The commitment that it takes, the dealing with lots of ambiguity. You're running multiple different businesses at the same time. So that's the type of person that we were looking for. And we learned over time that by focusing on intangibles more than pedigree, that was the way to find people that were really gonna go to battle with you.
Yeah. There's this, doing what you say is, it's a great culture for startup to have, but I think it's especially great for when you're raising funds from like VCs and stuff. Did that put a lot of stress on you guys raising all these funds? How'd you go about doing it? And was it, how did it change the business?
Well, in the early days, we weren't successful raising. And I remember the first year of the business, we were driving to Sand Hill Road. You had to drive to pitch investors, and do it in person if you can imagine that. But we'd make this long drive down Silicon Valley, and we'd pitch these firms, and there just wasn't enough there. The vision wasn't a big vision yet. We were these promising entrepreneurs, but that hadn't built anything. And, we spent a year doing that unsuccessfully. So we ended up raising some angel money. Initially, it's from kind of people that knew and loved us. A classmate, actually, at Berkeley was our first investor. I'll give him a shout out, Michael Berlsheimer. He started a fund called B Partners. And we took that money and we treasured it. Like, we were never going to be able to raise again, and we tried to make it go as far as we could. And with that initial injection of capital, we were able to make it a little bit more obvious, more momentum, more vision, more product. And so we went back to try to raise in 2009, a couple of years later, and this was during the Great Recession. So tough time to raise, one. Two, there just weren't as many VCs around, and it was tough sledding. And we ultimately got a call from this guy that said he was in the audience at the business plan competition that we won years prior, and that we had done everything he said, and he wanted to meet us. Ajay Chopra with Trinity Ventures, and he led our Series A. We only got one term sheet that round, but that was kind of our first round of funding.
Yeah, that's awesome. And so you took TubeMogul from a very fledgling startup to an IPO on the NASDAQ years later. You already talked about some of the pivots, but what changed taking the company from a private company to a public, much more scrutinized company?
Yeah, well, everything changed. I'll tell you, even the decision to go public wasn't obvious. At that point, we'd raised several rounds of venture capital. Back to kind of, why do people start companies? And, you want to control your destiny. I was beginning to feel like we were on this hamster wheel where, you just keep raising more money, adding more people to your board. It's like, well, where does this end? So you should have been in the board meeting when I told the board we're going public. We actually pulled it off in 6 months. We didn't have audited financials. We didn't have a CFO. Our head of sales became our CFO. There's all these crazy stories. And when we went out, the companies most like us, our comps, just totally shit the bed. They missed their earnings. So it was a brutal IPO. We looked different. We were different. We're much more of a tech play at that point. But we got it done. We got out, and that's what entrepreneurs do. What changed? There's so much financial press that you'd drive home and your neighbor would be like, "Hey, Brett, good day on the market," or "I saw you sold some shares," or your mom would call, be like, "Great earnings call," and it's just very public. I mean, that may sound obvious, and we were performing. I think we were public 10 quarters, something like that. We had 8 or 9 beaten raises as a public company. So we would have a good quarter, raise our guidance, and the stock would go down. So we had like 600 millennials, and these guys, it's like a generation of gamblers. They're all trading crypto in the bathroom at the time. So obviously they're glued to the stock. And, the first quarter when you miss, you have a town hall and you go, "Look, the ups and downs of the stock market, that we're not going to let it bother us. We hit our goals. We know we're winning. Put your Warren Buffett hat on. Let's go." Second quarter, you beat and raise, stock goes down again. VCs are selling. We had low float. We had all these things that were kind of against us. You have another town hall. So it over time, definitely became distracting in some ways. In other ways, it gave you a lot of street cred with your clients. The day after we were public, you'd walk into a client meeting and they looked at you just a little bit differently. Same company, we just had public shareholders instead of private. So yeah, it definitely changed a lot. It was a lot of fun though.
Yeah, for sure. And so you guys sold to Adobe a couple years later. What does selling a startup to a larger company look like personally and at a professional level? And why was Adobe willing to pay such a high premium for you guys?
It was mostly about the founders and the talent, obviously. Now we were public just short of 3 years, and we were beginning to feel like we could be a great company, but not a good public company. Because again, we were performing, but we weren't creating shareholder value. So we decided to look at ways to take the company private. We hired a banker, and we first went out and got kind of private equity interest, and then spun that private equity interest into interest from strategics. And many of these companies that we were talking to, we already had some type of partnership with, we had relationships with, and we were public. So, a little bit easier to diligence in a way as a public company because all your financials are out there. I remember we had an offer that was exploding from a private equity firm at $12 a share. We were like $8 a share at the time, so it's a pretty good premium, pretty good offer. We just, so much of what made us successful was the people. And when we started to understand what life may be like under kind of private equity rule, we just felt like we couldn't do that to the team. So one of the kind of courageous decisions we made in retrospect was we turned down that offer without having another offer yet. Fortunately, the Adobe offer came through at $14 a share. I remember we thought it was kind of a done deal. We're just waiting for the CEO of Adobe to sign. They couldn't find him. Like, how can you lose the CEO of Adobe? He was in China at the time, and we had forgotten that we hadn't forgotten, but we had an earnings call coming up, and we just assumed we were going to issue a press release. Company would be sold. We wouldn't do the earnings call, but we didn't have the deal done. And so we had to do this earnings call. And normally, like for me, I have to prep for things for, weeks. And we had to do this earnings call without any prep. It ended up probably being one of our best ones. And we think what was happening is, and I never got confirmation of this, but maybe Adobe was waiting for us to confirm our guidance publicly, which we did. We got a call from them immediately after that earnings call. They found the CEO. We got the deal done. So that was in 2016. Started the company in 2007. So.
That's awesome. So you're talking about doing all of these different things. It was kind of a rocky beginning, lots of different pivots, and then you took it public, all these earning calls. Do you think there's such thing as a balanced life as the CEO of one of these successful startups?
No, I mean it depends on what you mean, and that can be kind of a loaded question. But back to the concept, just building something from scratch, it's impossible. It's so difficult with incumbents and with the lack of resources. So if you sign up for an adventure like this, you almost have to be a little bit sociopathic. I mean, at least for me, I wasn't smart enough not to work, 18 hours a day. And, we did that for the whole adventure. I have to tell you though, I mean, we made it really fun too. It was a work hard, play hard place. We had constant parties and celebrations. We would have people's families at the events and in the office as much as we could. So there were often kids and spouses running around. We had this thing called a partner board meeting where for some of the key partners, we would present to them so they knew what was happening and why it was worth their family's investment. So we were working hard, but I think a lot of people would tell you that it was also the most fun that they've ever had, and they met their friends for life. And what I learned is that it's rare to win. And working for an organization that has momentum, it means you get to win, you get to learn, you get to challenge yourself. Where there's growth, there's opportunity. So there's all this good that comes out of it. And the trick is just finding the right people that know what they're getting themselves into. That, the hours in the office may be a little bit longer for a period in your life, but they'll be worth it. And for a lot of our team, that adventure, it became like an accelerant to their careers. They're in executive or senior roles now and doing really well because of that experience. So difficult, but what's difficult and is worth doing usually too.
Yeah. So after selling, you did work for Adobe for a few years, but you probably had a lot more free time on your hands. What were you most excited to get back doing in your personal life?
Well, the first year of Adobe, I mean, we were really working hard. We wanted the acquisition to be successful. We wanted our team to be set up. And what we learned is like there's a pace of things in a big company, and you kind of have to follow the culture of the mothership a little bit. So we had a year of Rage Against the Machine, and then the second 2 years I learned to follow the larger company's pace a little bit. And I was excited to spend time with my family and friends and just be a good human again. I mean, so much of your identity gets wrapped up in being CEO because it has to be. It's just such an all-consuming thing. And a lot of times you take that home with you. So it was really fun just to get back in touch with being a good person that was around. And I missed, some of my kids' childhoods. So all of a sudden, I'm home at night helping with homework and at the dinner table, and that was fun. Um, and then just getting healthy again. My body was pretty broken at the end of that 12-year journey. So getting to prioritize myself and my health, and then got this amazing place in Tahoe. So get to be here with amazing neighbors and have a lot of fun in the sun.
Yeah, yeah. So you're one of Tahoe's newest residents. You just moved up here full time a couple weeks ago. What initially drew you to Tahoe, and then what kind of pushed you over the edge to make the full time move?
Our family loves it. I mean, I'm a water guy, so to me, it's about Tahoe in the summer. So every day that we're here, we're swimming, we're boating. Just any day I can be in that water, it's just therapeutic. And a lot of it has just been family time too. There's something about this place where we're all just a little bit more in the moment. So when we're up here, we're focused on each other. We're playing board games. We're doing hikes, and maybe some of it's there's not as much to do. So you do more things together, and you do the same things over and over, the same hikes and swims. But I feel lucky to be here.
Yeah, yeah. So, it's a much more balanced life now, but you still needed something to do. So you started Swift Ventures with your co-founder. Can you talk about that a little bit?
Yeah, so I was trying to figure out like what the heck to do with my life. I personally wouldn't want to be retired. I mean, I really like building things and I'm good at it. It's fun to do the things that you're good at. I always thought that I'd do another one, Nick, but just didn't think that my body could do it. I'd been doing board positions and investing as an angel at the time, and started to play the role of consigliere to other founders, where was just the guy that had their back, helped them navigate the sharks, helped them get from A to Z, and felt like I was good at that, and it was fun. Wanted to work with John again, and then it was 2019, 2020. John and I were feeling like there was about to be an AI explosion. Our company, in part, was fueled by, we called it machine learning. We used it to optimize our ad spend. So we started a small fund, in part because wanted to see if we liked it, and our thesis was that AI was going to explode, but the tools to help people manage their data and deploy AI systems were still immature. So we started Swift Ventures and started a fund one. We made 35 bets in that fund, a lot of AI infrastructure type companies, and just raised a second fund this year.
Very nice. And so what does a day-to-day look like for you, working maybe as a board member and, general partner at Swift, and also balancing your lake life? What does that look like for you?
Our North Star is be the best in the world, helping our companies get to a Series A financing. So we're investing early in these companies, and half my time is kind of being embedded with the companies, helping them do whatever they need to do to hit those key milestones. So that's a lot of my day. Some of my days meeting new companies, some of my days keeping the people that bet on us, our LPs, informed. And I like to work, so I still work hard, and venture capital, it's a hustle business. I mean, you're a commodity, so you get out of it what you put into it. So I'm still hustling, but by not having so many people to manage, you just don't have as many fires to fight and things like that. So you're a little bit more in control of your time when you're not working, and I think that's the big difference. So it's a little bit more balanced now.
Yeah, and what is your guys' value prop for Swift Ventures? Is it just the two founders that can help other founders?
Yeah, it's who else would you rather have on your cap table than two founders with complementary skills? John and I invest as a team, which is unusual. So you get both of us, and we bend through it, not just as like the number 6 person, but as the founders that scale the company from beginning to end. So some of it is about empathy. Some of it is about helping people focus on the things that really matter. Some of it is about relationships to help them raise capital. And then our check size is relatively small. We're not a big fund. So in many cases, we're investing alongside a bigger fund as well, and we all work together as a team.
Yeah, that's awesome. I'm sure I could talk to you a lot more about all of this stuff, but we'll wrap up, and I'll ask you the last question I ask everybody who I interview. If you could go back and give your 20-year-old self one piece of advice, what would it be and why?
I think you have to go through life without any regrets, and so I really don't have any. But if I had to go back, and I wasn't giving myself something like a stock tip, I'd probably tell myself just to pay more attention to my health and my body, because I remember those years. A lot of our pride was like, we can work 24/7. We can take red eyes, like we're going to bury the competition and work ethic. And there's kind of a cumulative effect with stress and health that maybe you don't see. Like our body, by the time you get the check engine light, you're kind of in trouble. So I think if I could go back and just focus a little bit more on that, probably would have been a good thing.
Yeah, awesome. Well, Brett, thank you so much for joining me today.
Thank you.
If you guys are watching on YouTube, please make sure to like and subscribe. Apple Podcasts and Spotify, please make sure to follow and leave a rating. And please share this episode with somebody who you think may be really interested in Brett's career in tech and startups. And I will see you guys in the next episode. Thank you guys so much.